găsit, eu sunt Radu Mihalache și astăzi vă invit la primul dintre interviurile Festivalului de Muzică Veche București. Primul meu invitat este un maestru al oboiului. Despre el spunea dirijorul Philippe Herreweghe că este cel mai strălucit oboist al lumii. Este un profesor, interpret, este o personalitate complexă și mă bucur că l-avem la București și putem vorbi astăzi cu el. Este vorba despre maestrul Marcel Ponseele. Maestro, it's a great honor to have you here in Bucharest. Is it your first time visiting?
I was several times in Romania. The first time was in '82, I think. Yeah? And then the last 5-6 years I came several times for concerts. And also I gave a summer course in Timișoara.
I would like to start with you at the beginning of your musical life, musical career. What do you think was your first moment, your first contact with music that made you say, oh, this is what I want to do?
I think I was 10 years old and I went to a concert together with my father. This was the St. Matthew Passion by Bach. So I was a little boy, could hardly read 2 notes of music. And I had to listen to this work, which takes more than 3 hours. At that time, the tempos were even slower than the way we perform it now. And really, I remember when I came home, I went to the piano and I was searching the recitativo I heard with 2 oboe d'amores in thirds. So you can put one finger, leave one note, another finger, and yeah, this really touched my heart. And yeah.
So it was love at first hearing with the oboe.
But not only the oboe, just the music. And my father was a music lover. He's still a music lover. And he said oboe is a really beautiful instrument. And he took me to a recital with Pierre Pierlot. And in the 60s, Pierre Pierlot was the teacher of Heinz Holliger, Maurice Burger, fantastic oboe player. And I remember the sound of his instrument. It touched me a lot. And so I went to the music school in Bruges, in Belgium, and a teacher came in the class with new instruments, and there was the oboe, and he said, who wants to learn this? And I was the only one who was raising his finger, and since then I am playing the oboe.
Well, you studied it in the classical manner, but afterwards, after you finished school, you changed course and you went the route of the early oboe, of the Baroque oboe. What determined that change?
Yeah, I was playing the modern oboe, but at that time I met Paul Dombrecht, who was one of the pioneers, was working for Leonard, for La Petite Bande with Sigiswald Kuiken, and I saw his original instrument he just bought, and I was really fascinated by this wood turning, and also the sound touched me a lot. So I decided to order an instrument, so I was 18 years old, and I sent a letter to one of the makers in Germany of early music instruments. And I got a letter, you are on the waiting list, you have to wait 3 years. But I was really impatient, and my father said, if they could build these instruments in the 18th century, now we have much nicer machines, we can make that ourselves. So my father bought a lathe, so the turning machine, and we started to make an oboe. So I made with my father one oboe, a copy of the original of Paul Dombrecht. And then after one instrument, my father said, no, it's your turn. And since then I'm making instruments. Now I'm working together with a younger brother. And yeah, we make a lot of instruments, about 50 a year.
It's fascinating. I've seen on YouTube students and other musicians using your instruments and saying it proudly. It's an enduring passion, so it started very early. How did it change you as a musician, thinking about music?
Well, normally when somebody likes to start Baroque oboe, he buys an instrument, I give him a staple and a reed, and he can start. But I have to cut the tree, I have to make the bore, I have to make the keys to the instrument, I have to invent the staple, this little tube in metal, and that's really important. So every evening I made about 5 staples in different lengths and conicity to find something who was really working, because in the beginning the Baroque oboe was an instrument, you could hardly play an octave on it, it was so out of tune, and yeah, with a lot of experiments during years we find a good solution to make it as a really beautiful instrument.
It was difficult because also I imagine it was a tradition that was kind of lost. It was just being rediscovered at the time.
Yeah, that's true. And also, all makers have secrets. Yeah. When I ask somebody to another maker, I don't know, this is a secret I can't tell you. And this changed me a lot because now I think the more you communicate to everybody, they start thinking too, and new ideas can grow. And that's much better, and you can, for the evolution of instrument making, instead of thinking, I have a secret, I can't communicate it with the others.
When you started playing early music, you had one of your first and greatest wins in 1981 when you won the Musica Antigua contest in Bruges. How did this change your career and your exposure?
This competition was really the big change. Before I played with friends, marriages and sometimes funerals and little concerts we organized ourselves. But then when I did this competition and I was in the final, I was immediately asked by Sigisward Kuiken to play in his Laptitbande. And then Herreweghe just started also, and once the oboe player he had at that time, a Dutch oboe player, Ebbingen, was ill, so they called me to replace, and so that this was a new start. So I finished the studies as a modern player. I worked 1 year in the National Orchestra of Belgium just for a replacement, but my dream was to be freelance. And these contacts with Laptitbande, with Herreweghe, made it possible. So I was freelance for now 35 years.
You're part of many groups, ensembles, orchestras. Would you think of one besides your own, which is closest to your heart?
Well, the closest to my heart is the way Philippe Herreweghe is making music. I worked for people like Ton Koopman, John Elliott Gardner, also Suzuki in Japan. But what I feel when I make music with Philippe, it's kind of dialogue, and in a way we have the same ideas. We had, it's true, we had the same education in Belgium, Catholic school. But his approach to Bach is also what I feel, and I don't find it superficial at all. So,
I've heard your recordings with him of Bach oratorios, and it feels natural. It feels right. It's a feeling you sometimes don't get with many players. Is it also because of this personal connection, of this, let's say, musical friendship that you have with him?
Yeah, it is. And sometimes you have conductors and they have the truth and they insist to have their truth. With Philippe, you can have a dialogue and sometimes say, I don't feel like this, and we discuss, and this makes new ideas, and you feel comfortable as a player. When you have to play and you don't really feel it, When Ton Koopman said to me, can you play trills there, and there? I said, sorry, Ton, but I don't feel these trills on this place. And with Philippe Herreweghe, I never had that kind of discussions.
Because I think it's essential also that the player knows best his instrument, what he can do, when he can do it. So this is your liberty with Philippe. Yeah,
but that's the danger. You know the limits of your instrument. But if somebody can insist to try to have not only that you're on the edge of the limits, this helps you also to develop. Otherwise, you can just play very nicely, little sound, beautiful. But no, it's good that there is a kind of dialogue and discussion between the two players.
So it's necessary for a player to evolve and discover new territories. Well, a new territory for you was founding your own ensemble, Il Gardellino. You made your own little singing bird. How did this happen?
Well, before, like I told you, we played marriages. We had a little group, and we called it the Quintet of the Jacobins, because in the 19th century there was a quartet in Bruges. There were just rich people who came on Sunday together to play string quartets by Haydn, and one century later we came with our group. With 5 people. We had a flute player, Jan de Winne, Guy Pinson on the harpsichord. And we played many concerts together. But then there was a kind of split. There was one musician who could follow we were not so happy to play with him. So we started a new ensemble, and this was Il Gardellino, named after the little bird. It's a work of Vivaldi where the flute had to imitate this little bird. I don't know the name in English. Chardonneret in French.
It's a finch.
It's a kind of finch. Yeah.
It's finch. Yeah. It's the golden finch.
It's golden? Okay.
Yeah, the golden finch.
I learned something. Thank you.
So this spawned a very beautiful career with many recordings. I mean, like I've counted somewhere over 30 recordings, not only with Il Gardellino, but you in different orchestras, ensembles.
I think I made 300 CDs in my life. Yeah. Once we made the list, and I was really surprised.
It's incredible. So that's what I think. It will be a bit difficult to make you pick your favorite, the one that was closest to your heart.
I have to say, I don't have the CDs at home. I never listen to it. I even don't have a CD player. So when I get a CD, I listen in my car, and then I see my mother or friends, I just give it away. So now, if I have to choose one CD, the Cantate Ich habe genug, Cantate 82, and the recording with La Petite Bande and Klaus Mertens. That's one of my favorite performances. And also with Gardellino, we made beautiful CDs. The Bach Concerti I recorded. There's one slow movement when I hear it, I'm always in tears.
What I love your Sonata by Marcello with Gardellino. That's what I absolutely love, and that's why I wanted to know what's your favorite. It's interesting that you have this big career and you can still manage to construct instruments at the same time. And your concerts are very interactive, your small recitals, like the one here in Bucharest. You show people instruments. Can you tell us a bit the history of the oboe?
Well, first of all, when do we speak about an oboe? For me, it's when probably a shepherd took a reed, the cane, and experimented. So when he made some noise, we have already the noise of an oboe. And then in history, you have all these shawms, zurna, gaita, suona in China, shenai. There's all the reeds, all the instruments with a double reed. And it's with the Crusades, they brought instruments to Western Europe, and then in the medieval and Renaissance we have the shalmai, the shawm. It's also an open-air instrument, and it's only in the 17th century that they said, let's make an instrument, let's transform it into an instrument we can use for chamber music. So instead of having the reed completely free in the mouth to produce a big sound, now we pinch it between the lips, makes it rounder. Also, we will call it now the Baroc oboe, is an instrument with a much larger bore, and the pitch went also down. Very low pitch, even one tone lower than the piano nowadays. And this makes a warm instrument of the Baroc oboe. And for that reason, they were using it inside, and it played together with the 24 violons du roi in Versailles. So suddenly the oboe band came there.
Came to its glory. We have it here.
This is the Baroc oboe. It's a copy of Stainsby. Was a maker in London at the first half of the 18th century. It's made of boxwood. Nowadays, modern oboes are made of ebony, of grenadille, a much harder wood. This is a bit softer, but fantastic wood to turn. The only problem of boxwood is that it works, so it's not a stable wood. Even when the wood is 150 years old, when the weather changes, the wood is still moving. And for that reason, they don't use it anymore. But here we have only 2 keys. That's not a problem when you see the modern oboe with its 30 keys, then one day all keys are stuck or they are too loose. So
because of the movement of
the movement
wood.
of the wood. So that's for the reason that they were choosing stable wood like ebony and grenadille. And even nowadays, they are also using a kind of resin yeah, that's more plastic-like oboes, but yeah.
This is one of the early examples of an oboe with keys.
Yeah, it's a very simple system because you have 6 holes, well, even double holes for the half tones. And then, because my little finger is too short, they put a kind of system that you press here and you close the hole there. And you can't play a whole concert by closing this hole. So that's for the reason that they also put a key that you can open with the little finger. Yeah.
So they made them larger to get that lower tone that you were talking
yeah.
about. Also, I think it's to be easily used with harpsichords that were also, let's say, lower.
Yeah, and also you can play in a bit more keys. Normally, when you have a strom in D, you play in D and that's it. Eh? Here, we try to have a chromatical scale. The problem is, the lowest note is C, or do you say Do in Do?
Yes.
Yeah? Then you don't have Do DS, it doesn't exist on a low one. Then we can go up, but only 2 octaves and 1 note. Yeah? And when we have more than 3 flats or more than 3 sharps at the key, it becomes really complicated. Yeah? And for that reason, they invented another instrument. That's the oboe d'amore. Yeah? And typical for oboe d'amore is the bell. Eh? Here you can compare the bell a bit with trumpets, but when you look very well, you see there is a little rim here, and this keeps the sound, so make it a bit rounder. Here they did it very extreme, so this is open, but they put a ring here to close it in a way, and the sound is warmer, and for that reason they call it oboe d'amore. And oboe d'amore is also a third lower, 2 tones lower than the oboe. This means that what we call a low C, low Do, is in a way a La. So this instrument is in La majeur. Yeah? Yeah. So you can play Do majeur, but it sounds La majeur. So you have the 3 sharps, but it's easy as.
So it's a
transpository. You can compare it with the clarinet in C, clarinet in A. And,
What's the kind of repertoire that we can hear in an oboe d'amore?
Oboe d'amore is only in Germany. In France, Italy, England, they were never using this instrument. Bach is using it a lot in his cantatas, also in the St. John Passion is only 1 passage, but Matthew Passion there's a lot for oboe d'amore. Telemann wrote nice concertos, Graupner also a lot.
I imagine when Mendelssohn brought back Matthäus Passion, did he use an oboe d'amore? Did he have it? Or
no, that was one of the problems they couldn't solve at that moment. After Bach, the oboe d'amore was not used anymore. Forgot completely this instrument. And when Mendelssohn started to perform the Matthew Passion, the revival of Bach in the 19th century, he replaced the oboe d'amore parts by clarinets. Also, the oboe da caccia was written. There was also clarinets who had to play this. But then a new revival came, and they started to make instruments. So in Belgium, there was Maillon was one of the makers of the new oboe d'amore, and Ravel, for his bolero, was using this oboe d'amore to have a new color in his bolero.
So the oboe had, let's say, its glory times in the Baroque and partly in the classical period, and afterwards you talk mostly about 20th century music.
Yeah, that's the tragedy of the oboe. Eh? First of all, we had in the 17th century this open-air instrument with a very small bore, and then they made an instrument with a much wider bore, and the instrument became a chamber music instrument. But in the 18th century, the pitch was rising up. Yeah? Let's say from 1 tone lower till Mozart we played now 430 and even higher. So the makers had to make instruments who were playing higher. You can't cut off this, the instrument is not in balance. So they had to reduce the bore again, and what we get is the bore of our open air instrument. So the oboe in the 19th century was an instrument that was really nasal sound, and not beautiful at all. And all oboists, when you read letters, they're all struggling to find a beautiful sound on this instrument, which, in a way, an open-air instrument. It's only at the end of the 19th century that they, with the key work, that they couldn't make it rounder and adjust the bore. But So in the 19th century, we don't have real repertoire for the oboe.
So it was only relegated to orchestral parts, and that was his place.
And thanks to the symphonies of Beethoven, who was the music, they were even thinking to stop to use oboes in the symphony orchestra because too difficult and not good players.
It would have been a very different musical
of
landscape.
course, and they couldn't do that with music like Beethoven. The symphonies, the specific chorus of the flute, clarinets, oboes.
You also have a very curious instrument over here.
That's true. First of all, I will show it. The
Because
name of this instrument is oboe da caccia. And this means hunting oboe.
the first impression, seeing it, it makes me think of a brass instrument, or afterwards of a cornetto.
Yeah.
How does it work? Why does it look this way?
Well, in the beginning, there is a tenor oboe. Let's say that the oboe is soprano, the oboe d'amore, the alto, and then the tenor oboe in F was in the beginning a straight instrument. The problem is when you have to play the straight instrument, the holes are very far away, so you get painful shoulders, and also your fingers are, after 5 minutes, it's really a torture to play this instrument. So they invented an instrument which is closer to the body, and that's the reason why we have this shape. And how to make this? So you make it straight like an oboe, you turn it on the machine, and then we cut every centimeter, and then you can bend the wood, you glue it, and then to avoid that you will see this cutting, and also to be sure that you're not losing air, they put some leather on the instrument. That's the reason why you think it's like cornetto. Cornetto is another way of making. They make it in two parts. They glue it together. But here is one piece of wood turned, then cut, bent, and with the leather. And why a metal bell? There are other oboe da caccias, and they have a wooden bell. But the maker at Bach's time, one of the main makers in Leipzig, was Eichner. He made also a lot of oboe d'amores, and in his workshop they made oboes, flutes, bassoons, and also trumpets and horns. And I think instead of turning a big piece of this, a whole tree, he just used a metal bell. And because of this combination, it looks like a signal horn during the hunting, and they called it the oboe da caccia.
But they didn't use it as a signal horn in
No.
hunting.
It's just because it has.
Because of its look.
It looks like, as I say. Yeah.
What type of leather? What do you use for?
This is leather that I'm using from jackets and trousers. So, yeah.
So it's very interesting. And we have another contender.
We can call this the English horn avant la lettre.
Yes.
So the problem with this instrument is once you have the bore, we make the bore, you put some steel in it, but once you bend it, you can't correct the bore anymore. So they had to find a solution, and the solution is this. It's this instrument, and this they call corno inglese or cor anglais, English translated into English horn. But this has nothing to do with a horn, with a brass instrument, nothing to do with England. Now, why this name? It's very simple. Cor, it's not the core like we know the horn, but it's the corpus, Latin. Corpus, so the body.
Yes.
Body with an angle.
Oh.
Anglais. So a body with an angle, a corps anglais, and they made corps anglais of it, and they translate it into English horn. But this is the real corps anglais with the angle.
So it was just a case of somebody mishearing the name,
probably, yeah.
and naming it English horn. That was one of my big questions, because it's not a horn, and it's not particularly English.
Yeah. And it's for the same reason, to have the instrument closer to the body, otherwise you have again this problem. Nowadays they solve this problem. English horn is a straight instrument, but with the keywork you have the same distance like you have on the oboe. So in the orchestra it's very easy to play oboe, to take your English horn. In Matthew Passion, when I have to play after the oboe, I have to touch the oboe da caccia, It's really and the opposite way from caccia to oboe is even worse because then you have the feeling that your oboe is like this.
Also, one question: how is it the transition from a modern oboe to an early oboe, a Baroque oboe, and the other way around for a player?
That's really difficult. You can combine it, but at the professional level, I should say don't do it. Or you have to arrange your agenda very well to say this period will be for modern oboe, this for Baroque oboe. The way of blowing is so different. Also the reeds were so different. Yeah, it's difficult to combine it and to guarantee a high level of playing.
You also teach master classes. What is the essential thing that you teach your students? What's your principal advice when they start playing?
I was freelance for more than 35 years, and now I'm just teaching. It's my third year, so it's new. And I'm really happy that I have all this experience of concerts, recordings, so that I can give it to young people. But for me, the most important thing is that I learn them that music is a language. Most of the time we are just technical, and it's true, oboe is a difficult instrument, and every time you make a new reed, it's like you have to play a new instrument. But the moment you make music, you have to forget all this, and you have to tell a story to the audience, and that's for me the main thing. I'm not a singer, I can't sing. So I need my oboe, and sometimes I call my oboe my prothese, just to express myself. And when I play Bach, there is very easy because you have the text. And Bach, he got the text, he put music on it. I can read the text, and I'm thinking, what will Bach mean? And that's easy. When you play sonatas, then you have to invent your own story, and that's what I miss a bit of students there. The focus is on technique and not on expression. And I like to hear somebody playing mistakes, but when I hear a story, I'm really the most happiest teacher in the world.
So that's, let's say, the biggest problem with the early musicians, that they're
don't call it a problem, but
no, it's a problem that they will overcome in time. But that's one of the early moments when they're just strictly looking at the text, and that's it. But also, I know that Baroque music, it's relatively free. It has a free spirit. It has the spirit of improvisation in it. Yeah,
that's true. The ornaments and to make cadenzas, that's also part of the job. And for me, I always compare that a musician must be extremely happy. A painter, he makes a painting, and at a certain moment, he signs it and you put it on the wall. But as a musician, you have the music in front of you, and every day you can change the colors, you can change the light. Every day you can make another painting of the same painting in a way.
And it will be a new work of art. That's the advantage of music and of a live performance.
That's true.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It was a great pleasure having you here, and hope to see you next time in Bucharest. It was
I hope so too.
A great honor for me to meet
thank you for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Vă mulțumim foarte mult. Acesta a fost Marcel Ponseele, un mare instrumentist, un mare muzician, unul dintre importanții invitați a ediției din acest an a Festivalului de Muzică Veche București.
Radio Clasic. Un radio în culori.